That have done bad things.
Now I'm recording. Do you want me to record?
Okay. I'd like to make a comment about how good people can do bad things. We watched a movie last night that I hadn't seen in ages, the Nuremberg trials. And it wasn't the top echelons of Nazi Germany. This involved judges, Nazi judges, German judges, perhaps not Nazis, and how they sent people off to the concentration camps and so forth. And at the end, one of the judges who I really began to feel that he had a conscience and so forth. He said to the judge, one of the judges, that he just couldn't understand how what they were doing would result in 6 million people dying. And the judge said to him, the first person you sent that you denied rights to, that was it. You didn't have to do any more. And I think how we justify things is, for one thing, I think the church had a lot to do with it. The idea that these people were savages, were improving their lot, there were slaves in the Bible. That was part of it. The other thing I think was part of it was, well, gosh, everybody else is doing it. What I'm doing isn't really that bad. I only beat my slaves once in a while. So there's a lot of and I think a lot of that eventually people really begin to think they're doing a good thing. And they really think that this is the way things should be. I think consciousness, morality is no longer in play. They have an economic system that's working well for them. It's easy to overlook exactly how the wheels of that are being oiled, that it's with the blood of humans that they're doing this. And I think after a while, they just kind of whistle through the graveyard. I think a lot of what is happening in some areas, and I can't say, I can't point to any numbers and say this is true or not, but my thought is a lot of people who are afraid of the blacks, so forth, and really don't want things like integration and blacks to have an equal footing. I think they're afraid of the blacks eventually being the ones on top. And they're afraid of the blacks behaving, or any other minority behaving the way towards us that we have behaved towards them. I think that's the big fear that a lot of people are ignoring. DeSantis there in Florida, this thing about banning books because, oh my gosh, it might offend children. Well, he's talking about white children. He doesn't care about black children, but I don't think it's even the children he's worried about. I think he's worried about these books. If adults read them, they might start thinking differently about their behavior and what they're doing and see it in black and white right there in front of them, instead of having somebody like DeSantis say, oh, they shouldn't read that because that's bad. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Well, and I like the line in this song that I read to you that says their fear had turned to hatred. And I think that's what we do. Fear is a slippery slope, which easily becomes, I have to do this because you're whatever I define you as, which justifies my hatred of you. And so they use lots of the savages, anytime we say non whatever, I think is a good thing, non-Christian, non my kind of Christian, it makes it easy to go down that road towards hatred.
So hatred is like a crystallized fear.
Hatred is like a crystallized fear that becomes like both these things talk about the weaponizing of. Right? And is true religion, spirituality ever about weaponizing? And yet that's what we've done. We've weaponized economy against, the whole of this book is telling us how we weaponized the economy, right?
So I'm always interested in how serendipitous things are. the fact that we're reading this book, there are so many things that are coming into my awareness that I might not have heard before. One of them, when I got to the chapter on sugar, I thought, why is that a big deal? Didn't occur to me. And then I heard on NPR that in Florida, where there are cane fields, they are burning them as they always have. They burned them in Hawaii the year I lived there. But the ash is so bad that the people can't get it out of their hair. It's on everything. It's on their food. It's everywhere. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's not over. It's not even being addressed. And it's predominant. I mean, there are 3 Black townships or towns that are affected by this one big sugar company that has just specified that's where they're gonna be. And I also, feel like, okay, what can I do about that? And I'm not sure yet. But being aware of it makes me a different person.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like Barbara, everybody I meet, I'm saying, I'm taking this course and I'm reading about this stuff and it's just permeating my being in a way that important things do.
Yeah.
It's not frivolous.
And that's just lifting up that more education is a good thing, to think about, to not say, the bad part about like what you were describing, Deb, was this, I already know it all, and so I don't have to think about it any longer. And that's always a simplistic way of looking at something. There's always deeper and broader truths than what we think we know. Even if our truths are right, it doesn't tell the whole of the story, does it?
Jim,
Go ahead.
I had another thought about the role, and it came from your song, entitlement, our interior sense of entitlement of our way or the highway, so to speak. And how appalled, well, just as I learned more about my family's behavior, I'm like, oh gosh. And I recognize it's all of us. All of us contribute consciously or unconsciously, and we vote with our money and our energy and our attention. 3 things, sort of like Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Mother Mary, God does. There is a trinity in this 3-dimensional plane we have come to learn about. And I really believe, and I have this internal feeling, that this sort of class and reading and discussing together is not only opening our awareness, it facilitates expansion of the possibilities. And frankly, I frequently know things before a lot of other people know them. And right now, there is a blank space of we don't know how this is going to turn out. I heard one of our participants talking about the limited, the fear of well, pretty soon the white will not be the major race. Well, it's already not the major race. What America, and this is all part of why we're so mad at the borders and the blah blahs and the blah blahs. And whites have not been the primary race globe. But now let's just talk United States. Since Reagan, that's a fairly long time ago. So decades, we white people have had this unconscious fear because we were raised in an economy that worshiped money and sustenance and corporate success. And now we're recognizing, wait a minute, we in fact may have had it all wrong. This cultural decision making. And how big are we to say, okay, I have been wrong. I don't know what the solution is right now. I am going to pray and talk to other people about it.
I think the challenge is always this. And for me, it's when we set a limit on things. And we say there's only so much of. And so White America is saying somebody's got to be in charge. And if they get to be a majority over me, then I don't get to be in charge. And is it wrong that somebody else has control instead of me?
Yeah,
Well, I think it is.
we should share the control.
Yeah,
We shouldn't be, it's this or that, we should share. And so I don't think we all think the same way, white America does.
that's right.
Or have the same experiences and so on. So it's a real multiple thing.
Yeah.
And all people are different.
Right.
That comes from Ted Lasso's show, and you've seen it, it's a great show.
Yeah.
And yeah, all people are different.
New season starting next week.
Good.
And the difficulty is whenever we say, here's the difficulty in religion. Is that one true religion myth. That I have the one true path to God. Right, and nobody else does, or only if you do it exactly like me, do you have that? And when you mention Father, Son, Holy Spirit, one of the things I'm always touched with the Trinity like that, is that what if it's okay that you like Father better and I like Son better? What if it's okay if someone likes Spirit better or Paul's father and mother? Why does it matter? Are they always all ways of entering into, and do we have to agree on all
It
those?
depends on the book of Methodism.
Yes, sometimes, it depends on the laws and the rules and the paradigms we've set up. And does that make our setup perfect? I'm
No,
gonna wait to talk.
It seems to be suggested that really the only way to reverse or to overcome the inertia of 400 years of perverse relationship
yeah, it's a good word.
is to establish a truer relationship with all members of our society. My question is, can you ever hope to have a true relationship within the context of institutionalized inequalities? You know, I can drive to the poor side of town, go to a black church, you know, establish friendships, financially supported, but ultimately I go back to suburbia, you know, and they're still there. Is the answer, you know, precisely what Christ told the young prince or the wealthy young man? You know, if you want to have a real relationship with the downtrodden, sell all you've got and give it away. You know, then you've positioned yourself for a real relationship. And, you know, are we prepared as a society to step into the void and just say, here, you know?
But there are black folks up in those areas that weren't there when I was a kid in Tucson. And I grew up on that other side of town, and it was a real mixed
I
group.
mean,
And we knew we were
certainly, you know, obviously, if the system is working for you, you've got a vested interest in preserving it.
Absolutely.
You know, the system's working for me, but my conscience is bothering me, you know. Little courses like this, you know, like I say, we're preaching to the choir, you know. People that come to this are coming because they have, you know, a troubled conscience or a troubled conscience. The problem isn't there, it's with the people that don't have any trouble at all.
Right, and when is it we have no trouble at all? When we think we already hold all truth? Or we have all power so we don't have to?
What do we do about the people that have no problem at all?
Yeah,
Out of exactly the way things are.
yeah.
We keep trucking along and making improvements, and there's more interracial marriages and all of that contributes in a real positive way. So it's a slow process, and we sure aren't where we were 100 years ago or 150 years ago. So I see a lot of progress, and I see a lot of people that are not racist. And the mythology was so solid back that most people believed it, they just bought into it. And we've got a lot of stuff going for us now. We've got education for most everyone, whether it's good or bad or ignore stuff. That's a huge step from years ago. So
So let me challenge you just a bit on what you just said, Don, because I think we've made progress and there are things that are there. But I think sometimes that progress gets in the way. And I think that's what's been proven over the last 5 to 10 years. As we've proven that we didn't overcome all the racism in America because we passed the civil rights bill, because we did all these things, and because all of us have a Black friend somewhere. Right? Even as we were doing this, I looked through, as I was reading, I was looking at some of the different places in New Orleans. I like that city, it's a neat city. But I never really looked at the lower Ninth Ward. I don't know the lower Ninth Ward, it got wiped out. It gets wiped out by every storm because it is lower and it's not a good place. And if you go on Google Maps, you can drive through that neighborhood essentially. Very few sidewalks. Shotgun houses, you know what they are? They're about 10 feet wide and 50 feet long, right? And it's just bam, 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 one after another, right? Very poor housing, very poor situations, and yet that's what some people are still growing up with there.
Mhm.
I think that because we've come this far, we see we haven't gotten very far. We've got a long ways to go. And without having gotten this far, we wouldn't even recognize.
That's right.
So I think that's a big step. And I think it's just a long, long haul, and we'll never get there, but we'll keep making some steps maybe.
So my plan was to read the other poem as well. We don't have enough time, we only have about 5 minutes, but I wanted to read a couple pieces of it. Listen to this. Some people managed to briefly evade retrieval by people who could not see the people they pursued could not be retrieved. Isn't that an interesting line?
Could you read that again, please?
Slow.
Some people managed to briefly evade retrieval by people who could not see the people they pursued could not be retrieved. They even were running away, even in their recapture, they were freer than the people who were trying to imprison them again and again. Right? And somehow we have to celebrate that freedom is not just who owns the plantation, but that there's something much more important. I think that the miracle of Reconstruction is that people said, I'm free enough not to have to imprison you. Right? Blacks in America chose not to take retributive action when they could have. And in some ways they should have. But they chose not to.
Well, the same thing in South Africa,
Same
when
thing
they
in South
just
Africa.
decided we're going to a higher route.
Yeah.
We're gonna do something different.
Yeah, and how do we talk each other into that higher route rather than a very simple retributive
I don't think you
space?
talk people into it. I think you have to share ideas, and emotionally they have to get it.
But that's what I mean. I didn't mean enforce it.
Oh,
I mean, how do we talk to each other in a way that leads us to that higher space rather than the continually repeating lower space of who's in charge? And that's difficult because we like being in charge. We like having control.
well, what about the Jews who didn't take retribution after World War II?
That's right.
And basically, what was it, 80-90% of their families were wiped out.
Yeah. So the other line I want to read in here that I think is important about this discussion is this. People so afraid of working for themselves, they made it illegal for other people to work for themselves. How much of it is people having to face their fear? And you know, facing fear is always difficult, but how can we be alongside of people when they face their fear to show them that their fear is not as dreadful as what they think? How do we do that? How do we, you know, the thing about fear is we always think that pushing something further away solves fear, and it never does. The only way to solve fear is to move towards. And yet most of our history, we've pushed away or had control over rather than move towards.
Mhm.
We changed that dynamic.
This has been such a good class.
I wish there was an easy answer to all this. I feel just the fact that we're looking at how many always thought, when you thought causes of civil war, you thought tobacco, you thought cotton, but you never thought sugar. Right, and suddenly sugar becomes one more way to be able to see into this space and be able to enlarge who you are. Just that simple little economic thing that wasn't told to us.
Mm-mm.
And how do we let all of these little things enlarge us rather than say, I don't want to know more, I got enough. Because if we can fit sugar in, we can then work towards fitting Black people in. Right? Maybe it's a little more difficult, but it's much more important, isn't it? Next week, we go on a step further. I hope you've seen that each step, they're doing a better job of drawing us further into the questions that are here. If you don't have a 1619 book yet, we've got an extra one right here if you would like that. Also, there's all these other books. Judy brought a couple others for you to be able to look at and see if you want to read them as well. And so they're all there for you.
Could I also add, I just finished a book called Yonder by a man called Jabari Asim. It's fiction, but boy, it opened my eyes about, it really brought home to me what life was on the plantations was like. And one reviewer actually said, no, plantation life was not the white guy in the mansion and slaves out picking cotton. There was a lot more, it was a lot more nuanced than that. And this book has been very eye-opening to me, and it's well written. The audio book is excellent.
What's the name of the book again?
Yonder.
Yonder.
Yeah, so it sounds like you.
I haven't, no, I've heard of it, but I have not read it.
So keep reading, keep questioning, keep trying to be in conversation. People will resist that a lot, but I think it will not be solved unless we stay in conversation with each other, because it's not something that half of our society can solve and the other half. It is all about us choosing as a whole what to do. That was the whole point of South Africa, is that Mandela chose to say, how do we, the whole of, solve this, not just now the majority Black.
And that's amazing.
That's amazing.
But we can't wait for the other half to get to us.
We can't always wait. So we have to figure out what to do. Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it. Sorry for all the.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Fabulous. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank
Thank you.
Just got the download.